Hey everybody, so I wanted to do a follow-up, a continuation of my series on autism and narcissistic abuse, but I wanted to first address something that one of my viewers said, and I was just talking about the mental health of sex workers and strippers and that kind of thing. Someone that I believe the name was Werewolf by Day was the the poster of this message, but they were this is secondary to what I wanted to get into, but they commented on my video about autism. What was it? Autism, narcissistic abuse, and goldfish panties, I believe was the title. And they talked about how I talked about this go-go dancer I interacted with in that video. And they said that anybody, any kind of sex worker like that was mentally ill in their mind. That they said that any stripper, porn star, prostitute, anything like that, that's indicative of mental illness. I'm actually going to tell you no, no it's not, or at the very least it is not indicative of any kind of unhealthy or destructive mental aberration. And here's the thing. Now, everything I'm about to say, understand again, I am not a mental health professional. I cannot diagnose anybody. I cannot speak about any of these topics with any official capacity or anything like that. And anything I say, you should always weigh against, qualified information from qualified professionals and that sort of thing. But here's the thing. Years ago, over a decade ago, I was researching a novel that I was writing, which was my novel Eros Empire, which came out in 2012. And that is a novel that was set in the adult film industry. And so for that purpose, I interviewed a lot of people, a lot of sex workers, talked to and got to know a lot of strippers, escorts, porn stars, mainly porn stars, because that's what I was researching the book for and everything, and talked to a lot of these individuals. And let's be honest, it's pretty much all women. This ultimately comes down to a question of female promiscuity. No one, most of the people who are ironclad in their views on female sexuality don't even bat an eye with regards to male promiscuity, or if they do, it's a distant secondary issue to the main concern of women's sexuality and all of that. So here's the thing. No, it's not indicative of mental illness, and I'll explain why. Now, understand, there can be maladjusted individuals in any field of endeavor, any topic, or any field of endeavor can be appealing to maladjusted individuals in a way that caters to their maladjusted nature. But that's not necessarily what's going on with porn stars and all of the sex workers in general. What you have to understand is it's not that they are mindless sluts. It's that they are playing mindless sluts on TV. Most of these people like porn stars, that kind of thing, if you interacted with them outside of their work, as I have, you would be struck by just how normal they are. Like, you would not think there was anything terribly unusual about them outside of the sex work that they do. If you didn't know that that was what they did for a living, you wouldn't think there was anything terribly unusual about them or anything terribly wrong with them. So the issue when you're talking about sexuality as a manifestation of mental illness, you're talking about pathological behavior that's interfering with the individual's ability to live their lives in a constructive manner and take care of themselves and function on a day-to-day basis and that sort of thing. So think about it this way. The way to think about how most of these people would, sex workers, approach their work. Think of it this way. Imagine if you were to go up to a professional baseball player and say, "Hey, I'd like to go in your backyard and play catch with you." They would probably say something like, "Well, I don't know you, and I don't know you well enough to do something like that." And you'd say, "Well, wait a minute." Or you could say, "Well, wait a minute. You're a professional baseball player. You play catch with hundreds and hundreds of other people all year long." And they would say, "Well, yes, but that's my professional work. in order for, that's my professional job, and it's done under controlled circumstances, for my protection and the protection of everyone else with other professional people. And I don't know you well enough to just take you, to go do this play catch in the backyard, which is something I would reserve for my dear family and close friends and things like that. And so, by the same token, if you just went up to a porn star and propositioned her for sex the way characters in the fictional presentation of interactions in a porn video or something like that, the way they approach each other in that situation, they're most likely going to say no. They don't actually function that way. It's a character that they are playing. Now, the thing is, yes, you are. If you were to get to know these people, you would be talking to people who have, or find yourself interacting with people who have a lower regard for the kind of social mores that stop most people from more openly indulging in sexuality and that sort of thing, or feeling ashamed of it and that sort of thing. You would find that, but that varies from person to person, and it also varies culturally. Cultural standards around sex and nudity vary from country to country. Here in the United States, we have a fairly puritanical basis, or a fairly puritanical cultural basis of interaction, and so things like, for example, nude beaches here are done. Or public nudity is done largely on, well, it's not public, actually, it's private, but outdoor nudity is done basically on private land, privately operated lands, and that sort of thing. And laws about these things do vary from state to state. But if you're going to set up a nudist colony, it's going to be generally out of the view of the general public. And so, on the other hand, if you go to Europe, there are coastal cities and countries in Europe that have nude beaches, and they think absolutely nothing of it. You could go all the way to indigenous tribes, jungle and desert tribes, where the majority of the people in the community wear very little clothing at all the time. So if any clothing at all the time. So these things vary from culture to culture. And you are going to find individuals that feel less constrained by that. But again, that varies from person to person. And I will say, I am someone who, if you were to ask me, why is it inappropriate to take off your clothes in public? My answer would be, one is it's illegal, and two other people would might find it upsetting or offensive. If I don't go to the gym, they definitely would find it upsetting and offensive. But and three, they did not consent to participate in that experience of nudity. So those would be the reasons I would give you. Personal modesty would not be one of them. I'm just not, there are people who, if you said, why should you not take off your clothes in public, their first thing would be, oh God, I could never have anyone look at me that way, that sort of thing. Like, out of consideration for other people, I wouldn't take off my clothes, but I'm not worried about their judgment at all. Like, that would not faze me at all. And like, I'll tell you, give you an example. In fact, I heard about, there's a resort in Jamaica called Hedonism, or Hedonism 2, I think it is. And it's one of these like nudist sexual resorts and that kind of thing. I saw an ad for it, and I could not possibly afford something like this before we even get into what I would do when I got there, but I could not possibly afford it. But I was imagining what it would be like. And I thought, my main hesitation about going around a resort nude is mainly wondering what I would do with my room, my hotel key and my wallet and my phone and all of that as I'm walking around nude. How is that handled? Like, that would be my concern. How is my personal property going to get back to me? The thought of being naked around other people wouldn't bother me at all. So that is just, different people are wired differently, and different people have different comfort levels. Now, as far as like a maladaptive personality disorder expressing in a sexual manner, and again, I don't ever want to sound like some pompous know-it-all in this regard. always follow it up with, what I say up with research. But if you're talking about, for example, histrionic personality disorder, cannot or can be expresses, and very often does express, in the form of compulsive sexual promiscuity. Individuals with histrionic personality disorder will be constantly flirtatious, constantly expressing a hypersexual desire to have sexual interactions and that sort of thing, and not and in a very compulsive way where it interferes with their daily life. It interferes with their ability to function in the world and take care of themselves and that sort of thing. And that's when you're talking about a manifestation of mental illness. A histrionic type person, as I understand it, would be more more likely to be, because histrionic individuals have a problem with perceiving surface level relationships as being a lot deeper than they actually are. So a histrionic individual would be someone like would be someone like the woman who is the single woman who's in a adulterous relationship, having an affair with a married man, and she's pining over him and telling all of her friends, oh, he's going to leave his wife for me, I just know it, and then of course he never does. That's someone that's emotionally investing far deeper in a surface level relationship than it actually is. And that is actually the opposite mindset of the kind of person who is able to walk into a room, meet you for the first time, negotiate payment, have sex with you, take your money, and leave, thinking nothing more of the encounter. That's a very different mindset. And so that's the reality of it. I actually have a friend, I'm not going to say her name because she's out of the industry now, but I actually do have a friend, and I know this sounds tall, but I'm saying this in all sincerity, who she worked as a porn star, she worked as a dominatrix, and she worked as a stripper and as a brothel prostitute. She worked in the Moonlight Bunny Ranch, which was the worked in the Moonlight Bunny Ranch, which was the brothel, the legal Nevada brothel that was featured in the show Cat House on HBO. She's out of that now, and she is now a PhD, doctoral PhD. She is a licensed therapist and social worker, and she's a social worker now. That's her full-time gig, completely out of the sex industry, and just moved right on from it. And we don't afford women, culturally, we don't afford, and this is where I start to sound very progressive and feminist and everything, but we don't afford women that understanding. If a man went and had sex with 300 women or something like that, we might not even bat an eye. We would not say something like, aren't you glad you overcame your slutty behavior so that you could go accomplish other things in your life? No, we would just say, oh, that guy had sex with 300 women. Good for him. My favorite writer of all time, Harlan Ellison, claimed, and I from anecdotes I've read from other people, he certainly was apparently quite the ladies' man, but Harlan Ellison said that he'd had sex with at least 300 women in his life, and he said his wife asked him how many women he'd been with, and he said he stopped counting in the 300s. Now, he's one of the greatest writers of all time. He's won more awards for science fiction writing than just about any other living writer. And if you read any of his bios, it does not present in the context of Harlan Ellison overcame his crippling sex addiction to win all of these awards. No, we just say, hey, good for him. That kind of thing. That's the difference in mentality. And so, yeah, that's ultimately what it breaks down to. Like I said, I've interviewed a lot of these people, these women, interviewed them, hung out with them, talked to them, in some cases, had shared meals with them and that sort of thing, hung out and talked, and never did I get a vibe from any of them like this person's about to dive across the room and tackle me and rip my clothes off, or this person's overcome with insatiable lust and that sort of thing. No, it was completely switched off, and we're talking as I would be talking to you now. and we're just talking like people. And that's the difference. You know, none of these people are like, oh, all of these, you know, like flirting. I can't. Yeah, that's my that's my dramatization of female flirting. But you know what I'm talking about. None of the syrupy coming on to me stuff and things like that. Well, I will take that back in one instance. I was talking not in an interview capacity, but just talking one time to Mona Wales, and she told a friend of mine. I don't know that she would remember saying this. She told a friend of mine she wanted to put me in one of her videos. And as we were leaving, I was like, "Hey, that was really cool." She wanted to, not that I would do that, but she was, that was cool. And my friend said she makes pegging videos. I was like, "Oh, okay, forget it." But anyway, that's about the only thing where I've really been, and that was not in any kind of interview capacity. That was at a party. But when I'm sitting down talking to these people, hanging out with them, I've not gotten the impression like this person is overcome with insatiable lust and she wants to, she's going to jump my bones at any minute or anything like that. That is the vibe you would get off of someone that's histrionic or something like that, that's having actual issues with sexual compulsivity. So it's just like there's a big difference between someone who is an alcoholic and someone who just enjoys more alcohol than you do. There's a big difference between someone who is more sexually active than what you're comfortable with and someone who is truly sexually deranged. Anyway, there you go.